And really, questions have been around forever. If you think of it, they go all the way back to the very first chapters of the Bible when God asked questions of Adam of where was he. We use them all the time. We use them, to gather information or to test a level of understanding or even just to keep students alert and with us. Really, what we find out from questions guides our instructions, or at least it should guide our instruction.
Welcome to the BJU Press Teacher Edition podcast, where Christian educators are encouraged and inspired as we bring you interviews, practical ideas, strategies, and answer your questions about teaching in today's culture. And here's your host, Jenny Copeland.
If you have ever been in the classroom or trying to lead a chapel or maybe even a faculty meeting, you know the importance of questions and of interaction. You also know how important it is to get that interaction, that feedback from those you're talking to. We also know it can be a struggle to get responses from those who you are talking to. We know they have answers and they have thoughts, or at least opinions, but at times we can feel at a loss for how to get it out of them. Have you ever felt like your bag of tricks to promote classroom participation is just running a little low? Well, today we're going to talk about practical, creative ways to get responses in the classroom. But first, welcome back, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. This is a crazy time of year. Another school year is here. Everyone is trying to get settled and get into routine to learn new things. And I don't take your time for granted. We want your time listening to the Teacher Edition podcast to be well spent today and every week. So thank you so much for being with us. My heart and prayer is that you will walk away from each episode refreshed and with some new insights or ideas that you can use right away. And I know today's episode will be no exception. By the way, do you have a coworker who could use some encouragement or maybe some practical ideas? Let me encourage you to share this show with him or her. Sharing is so easy. Just open up this podcast in Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you're listening, and click that share button. Then you can forward this out to those who are on your contact list. If you are on our website, it's just as easy. Just share out that website URL. For those of you on social media, go find us, give us a like, and of course, you can share the show from there as well. We are Teacher Edition Podcast on Facebook and Teacher Edition Pod on Instagram and TikTok. Of course, you can also watch this episode by visiting us on YouTube at Teacher Edition Podcast. Okay, school is in session, at least for most of you. You're navigating those first days and the excitement of them, but pretty quickly you start having to dig into your strategy bag. As I mentioned in our opening today, we're going to talk about getting responses from students. Joining us for today's topic, we have Katie Klipp. Katie is a veteran teacher, having now taught for 20 years. She holds bachelor's and master's degrees in elementary education. In addition to teaching first grade, she also assists at BJU Press in writing, revising, and consulting. She loves interacting with other teachers, so maybe you have seen or heard her in a professional development session. She loves opportunities to interact with other teachers and do whatever she can to assist them with classroom management, technology, creative instruction, a whole number of topics. She's also not a new face to the Teacher Edition podcast. She has joined us to talk about the importance of teacher talk, our words in the classroom. Last fall, she shared some incredible insights on dealing with those tricky behaviors in your classroom. That episode was definitely a favorite. Katie, it's so great to have you back on the show.
Glad to be back.
Okay, so the topic of participation is an interesting one. It's one that is approached on all levels and in varying degrees. That being said, narrowing down to getting students to respond and respond well to questioning, that formative assessment in class, it really seems like that should be a given, right? I mean, really, how hard can it be? Teachers know how to ask questions. We all know how to call on a student. So what is the deal with this type of topic? How hard can it really be? What are your thoughts on that? Why is this topic so needed when it just seems very profound?
No, you're right. I mean, like if we were to play charades, that would probably be one of the actions that somebody would act out is teachers asking questions or calling on a student. The questions just kind of scream teacher, I guess. And really, questions have been around forever. If you think of it, they go all the way back to the very first chapters of the Bible when God asked questions of Adam of where was he? And God asked questions of Job, and then God asking questions of his disciples and others. And not because he didn't know what they were thinking. Obviously, he already knew that, but to help them understand their understanding and what they knew. And So questions, yeah, they've been around forever. We use them all the time. We use them, to gather information or to test a level of understanding, or even just to keep students alert and with us. And I was looking at a book called Checking for Understanding by Fisher and Frey. And they were talking about how ideally teachers check for understanding at least every 10 minutes. I would say on the first grade level, and with littles, it is way more than that. I was in a session last week at a conference, and they were talking about how even with smaller children, you're checking for understanding like 3 to 5 times per minute. And so that's just something that teachers do because it helps us when know whether we need to accelerate our instruction because our students already know what we're talking about or they're good on that, or whether we need to continue on that same topic and keep going because they don't understand it, or circle back to deepen their understanding. So really what we find out from questions guides our instructions, or at least it should guide our instruction. Sometimes I think we do it mindlessly as teachers. And I don't know if you've ever thought about this, of what kind of questions you ask. Now, today we're talking about answers and how to get students to participate and answer. But really, it kind of starts with what kind of questions you ask. And of course, there's the 5 W's, the what, when, who, all those. And I do a lot of that in first grade because we're kind of at a lower level at first of understanding. But I hope you do go beyond that. And I hope our listeners today will think of that, even though we're talking about answers and getting students to answer and participate. I hope they'll think about the types of questions they ask. Are they using divergent questions, asking for how does this information connect to the old information that we learned yesterday and connect it with the new? Or how is this different from that? And always bringing back and interrupting their forgetting and bringing back that old information. Or probing questions. Why does this happen? Or what can you tell me more about this? Or clarifying questions. How did you get to that answer? Can you explain how you got there? Or give me an example of what you're learning? Even inventive questions. And that's just something that I've been trying to work on in my classroom, is taking what would normally be very low level learning and making it into more complex tasks and using complex questions to get my students to think. And I've been trying to use more inventive questions, asking them their advice. What would you say to this person in the story that we're reading about? Or what is one thing you would change? Causing them to invent and not just spit back information. And searching questions. Go find that in your book. Go prove that to me. And even hypothetical questions. In first grade, I think we live on these. If we were ever on an island, I think we could survive for a while on hypothetical questions. Well, what if the bus doesn't come? Well, do teachers ever ask that? Maybe we should. What if this one thing were not in place? How would our world be different? Asking those hypothetical questions. But today, like I said, we're going to stick to more of the questions that would just want quick answers, but we'll do some with others. But one thing that our listeners have to really think about is that they have to be ready to embrace a classroom that is in motion, because a lot of these participation techniques are going to require a little bit more noise and action and excitement than just raising your hand. And so it might feel a little bit more like spilled rice than a tight hot dog when it comes to your classroom management, because they have to be ready to embrace that. And we know that movement is linked to learning. And so some of these participation techniques are going to be things that involve movement, because we know that helps students to learn. And that total participation has to be a priority, first of all, as we get started today, because none of this is even going to matter if you're okay with just one student raising their hand. And I know there's a place for that, and we have to keep that in our classroom. There's no way to get rid of that completely, but you need to want everyone to participate. And I guess that's where we're coming in on the ground floor. That has to be our foundation when we think about questions.
Okay, great start. So we're going to talk about creative ways to find out what the students know. So I guess a good starting point is, are there different types of answers? You already mentioned, you kind of touched on quickly, there are different types of questions. I thought that was great to challenge students challenge teachers, because we do kind of get in the same groove of, what happened? What do you think? How many? We stay kind of at that ground level. So that was great. I appreciate that challenge there. But are there different types of answers, and where do you start with those?
No, absolutely. Okay, so we're thinking about today a setting where everyone would answer. And like I said, there's no way to get rid of the hand raised or one child
Sure,
speaking
sure.
at a time. There are still many reasons we would keep that in our classroom, but I think we go too much to that side often because it's just easy. Who did this? What was the date of this or whatever? And it's just easy and it's quick and it makes us feel like we're in control. So I think we need to try to move that needle a little bit more over to the other side where we're asking answers from everyone and we're collecting that informal assessment of their understanding and where are they in their levels. And it could be verbal. It could be written. It could be a physical answer, whether they're moving and showing their answer or writing something down or drawing it or speaking it. And the idea here, though, today is that we're focusing on answers that include everyone at one time. So yeah, there's many different kinds of answers and ways, formats that you would ask for answers, but that's what we're going to focus on today.
Okay. So this summer at a conference, one of the speakers mentioned Four Corners, a game that really hadn't popped into my mind in a very long time. But it reminded me that you had used a spin-off or two or three or whatever of that game, if I remember correctly. I wonder, maybe we could start there as you give other ideas.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so let's do it. So one thing I want our listeners to really focus on today is the word action and not collection, because I'm going to try to give a lot of different ideas, things that I've tried in my classroom. And it's easy to just get overwhelmed with all the ideas and end up not using any of them. And I'm the same way. So I challenge our listeners today to write down one or two things that they will take action on as we give these ideas so that they will really make it happen in their classroom and not just keep a list of it somewhere and not use it. So yeah, you talked about the spinoff of Four Corners. So maybe we could talk about some different ways that you could use that Four Corners idea to get students to answer. Now, of course, you could put the answers in four corners, either on posters in your classroom. I like to use like a traffic cone. The ones that you get often from cheap little toy stores work really great as a whiteboard. So you can write the answer on the traffic cone and put it in the four corners of your classroom. And you can get students up and going to it. And if you're not comfortable with, I don't want them out of their seats, which I hope you are, but if you want them at their seat, then put it up, maybe the four answers on a screen. Okay, so I printed off an example of what my screen might look like. So those of you who are watching this, you can see this. And those of you who are listening, I encourage you to go see this. So you could make a screen either on your board that you use. You could put it up on a whiteboard. You could put this on your flat screen, and you put the four answers that are possible or not possible on there. And then they answer by, wow, there's many different ways that you can do this. They can put an object on their desk in that corner of their desk to match what their answer would be. They could stand at that corner of their desk, depending on your setup in your classroom. You could have them lean a certain way. There's so many different ways that they could answer in this. And I mean, if you think of all the options, you could do, which vowel do you hear in the middle of it? It could be a higher level math question and they have to figure out, what the answer would be or how would they get there. It could be story characters, just so many different ways that you can incorporate that four corners. And some other fun ways that I like to have my students all answer at the same time. And these, of course, some of them are age related, not all of them, but you can make them work in your environment. We call it whisper hold, where once they get the answer or they think they know it, they whisper it into their hands and they hold it there. This is obviously for the littler kids. And then they would release it out and all say it at the same time. So what is that doing? That's giving the fast ones an opportunity to have their let out, their outlet for their answer, but they're not blurting it out. Gives the slower ones time to get the answer. We all hang on to it, and then we release it at the same time. Even simple yes and no signs. This could be something that they just draw on a piece of paper and flip back and forth. It's fun even to do these, like put them on a straw and they use them. I have them actually printed on the back of my students' work folder. So we call it driving, and they turn their folder to the yes or no in response to my question. This would be great for like true and false things. Even this or that type answers, getting them out of their seats. I might say, hey, some people are wanting to take, the motto off the coin. What would you think if somebody wanted to take "In God We Trust" off the coin? Would you be in favor of that or not in favor of that? So that's good for like opinions, and they move to one side of the room or the other. And it's fun to see them kind of collaborating and talking with the other people who have that same opinion. It could be for a hard and fast answer, a yes or no, and you go to one side of the room or the other, but it's getting them up. And you can even have them lean. We call it lean a littles. And if there's just, they're a little bit too crazy to get out of their seats right then, which is actually when they need it, you could just have them lean towards one side. So doing that leaning or swiveling in their chair towards the correct answer. And, another fun way we can do this, the kids are crazy about emojis. You'd think it would kind of go away after a certain number of years, but they're not. And so we do emoji match in our classroom. And if you're watching, you can see what I'm holding up, but I would display 3 or 2, depending on how many answer options you have, 3 different emojis up on a screen. Or you can even make these into magnets and put them on your whiteboard. And then I put the corresponding answers under the emojis, and they match their face by making that same emoji reaction on their face to the answer that they want. So let's say if I said, well, where are you from? And they would answer South Carolina. Well, then they're going to make this super surprised, horrified
so it's almost like the emotion of the emoji.
Yes.
It's not like I'm sad. It's just you're making the sad face because you're choosing. So that's kind of some multifunctional things going on in your brain there
as well. Right. You can see them thinking about it. Like, yeah, for the ones who are from Georgia, they would be making a sad face to show that they're from Georgia. The ones that are from some other place, they would show that the happy face. So yeah, it has nothing to do with the emotion of your answer. It's just matching it to what you would want to say as your answer, as if you were raising your hand. So we call that emoji match. And you can put up as many different emojis as you want there. You can even display, if you just want something easy, is put 3 answers up on a screen. On the top, put an answer in the middle of the screen, put an answer on the bottom of the screen, or even put them on your whiteboard like this, or hold them up, whatever. And students respond to your question by putting, it could be an eraser, it could be a pencil. We have little, plastic frogs or whatever that we use, and they put it at the top of their desk, the middle of their desk, or the bottom of their desk to show which answer they've come up with. So getting them to give an answer, yes, may not be verbal, it may be a physical action, but getting them all to respond. So yeah, there's just so many different things that you can do, even with 4 corners or 3 emojis, whatever like that.
I like the fine motor of that too, and the transfer of that answer, because so often they don't do that unless they're taking like an achievement test, where they have to get the answer and then bubble it in, and that transfer can be tricky for them. So I know it's a little bit removed from it, but looking at the options on the screen and thinking top, middle, bottom, and you have to transfer that onto your desk, that's also a skill, plus the fine motor in there. So those are great.
And they have to, I often make them answer. If I say, okay, which one did you choose? I don't let them say, I chose 4. I say, I want you to tell it to me in directions. I chose the bottom left corner. I chose the top right corner. And they have to sit there and their face gets all scrunched up because they have to think about it. But it's really good for them practicing it that way too.
Yeah. Okay, so as an elementary student, one of the highlights for me was getting to write on the chalkboard. Of course, I knew since I was younger I really wanted to be an educator, so writing on the chalkboard was just, the most amazing experience. And even better yet, getting to bang the erasers together, because, there's just nothing like a mouthful.
Oh, when were you in school? Noah's Ark?
Yes, we were all in one schoolhouse. Yes. But then as a teacher, of course, I constantly had the chalk dustings on the back of me, when I would use my chalkboard, or colored fingers from using the whiteboard, markers, and the whiteboard. But where do boards fall now in 2025? Because we do have screens, we have all these amazing things. What are your thoughts on their effectiveness? Or should they just meet the dumpster since now we have screens and everything digital? What do you think?
No, I think you're right. And, we as teachers forget the magic of a whiteboard or a chalkboard or whatever, but my students still ask to draw on the whiteboard or erase the whiteboard for me during inside recess or whatever. They're still into boards. Okay. It hasn't gone away, but the boards have graduated quite a bit. And there are so many different options out there that you can use for your students. Doing a quick draw. I love doing that. Draw what we just learned, or draw a character that you're most like from the story. And so some things that you can use obviously still just plain old like a whiteboard or a chalkboard slate. If if buying whiteboards is a hard thing. In my classroom, I take cardstock and print a frame around it. So I print 20 of those and put them in a page protector. And that way they can write on it with a whiteboard marker. And I use just winter gloves. I go get those little dollar gloves and they use that to erase it. So that's an easy whiteboard option. And then you can also change the inserts. So when we're learning part, whole, or when we're learning, if it was an upper grade, we're learning angles, you can slide in something new into their page protector and use that with their whiteboard markers. But yes, there's far, far advanced things now. There are LCD drawing boards called like boogie boards, but there's obviously other kinds of ones that you can use that are so fun that you can just push a button and it erases it. The magic boards, which I think are from our era. I know this dates me, but oh boy, how do you describe these? It's got
Please
a little
not the Etch-a-Sketch with those two knobs.
No, not the
Please
Etch-a-Sketch.
don't.
No. Or those magnetic boards. But no, these had just like a piece of gray plastic that went down over a carbon board. And when you draw on the gray plastic, it makes an impression. And then you pull up the gray plastic cover. Okay, you may think those are obsolete. I got those out last year with my students because I have a class set of those. And it was just jaw dropping. They couldn't believe it. And they're like, where do you buy these? And they were so excited about it. And can we use these tomorrow? Please, can we use these tomorrow? I thought, wow, I am totally missing the magic.
On iPads, right?
I know, right? Why do we spend $600 on a tablet when you can spend 50 cents on a magic board? I don't know what they're called, but anyways, all the way up to high school, I bet would enjoy using those magic boards. And they have neon ones too as well. And those are so fun for just working out a problem, spelling a word, doing, phonics sounds, whatever. And even like Post-it notes, letting them do a quick draw or a quick answer on a sticky note and then putting it around. We have a big question mark that we put on our board when we write the question over it. And even as they're coming in the morning or as an exit ticket after a lesson, and they write their answer or their thoughts or another question that they still have on a sticky note and put it up. And then we discuss those as a class. That's another writing idea. This has nothing to do with boards. It made me think of something in my classroom, but so I love puppets in my classroom. And, you kind of think, well, that's just little kid stuff, but whether it be puppets that they make, okay, so we did like an Abraham Lincoln activity where we spent several days learning about his life, and we did some really great activities with it, but I wanted to see what they took away from that. I could have had them do a true or false type activity where they just, true, false, yes or no, but we made Abraham Lincoln puppets, and we had Abraham Lincoln answer. Okay, so there's another, I know that's very age limited, but when I gave the question, Abe answered yes or no or true or false. So just varying it, whether it be writing on a whiteboard or using a puppet to answer, it doesn't matter. Just vary it. And another one that I like to do with my classroom, we call it look, touch, and show. And I use this in spelling actually to teach them proofreading, but you could use it in so many different areas. We use it in math as well. So the idea is I put up 3 answers. Only one of them is correct, okay, like we would often do. Here's an example that I'm holding up so you can see what my TV screen would look like. I would say, which is the correct spelling of hen? And they would look at this and decide, but the way they would answer is what's fun. So I have them get out the 3 colors of markers that correspond with the 3 colors of answers that I have on my screen, or you could put it on your whiteboard written in 3 different color markers. And they look for the correct answer. They touch the marker. They're not holding it up yet because it gives everybody time to think about it. So in this case, they would be touching the blue marker. And then when I say show, they hold up their blue marker to show that they're voting for the blue spelling of the word hen. And then
that could be a crayon, colored pencil, anything.
Absolutely. Right? It could be a piece of paper. You get almost like a multiple choice just done with colors. So I just love it because it gives my students time to think about the options. And it's a little bit deeper thinking of, okay, I got to match it. I'm not going to show it yet. Right. And because I say show and they all showed at one time, there's not the looking around and seeing what Jimmy next to me, who's always pretty smart. Yeah, they don't do that, right? Yeah, they do that. Another fun one that we use is back to back and front to front. And so I split them into partners, and they stand with their backs to each other in the two partners, each holding maybe a whiteboard, or maybe they have a piece of paper on a clipboard. And then I give them a question. Maybe it's a problem that I want them to work and it's posted up on my TV screen, or I give them a verbal word to spell. And while they're back to back with their partner, they both spell that word, and then they wait. And I look around and make sure everybody's got time to answer. And then when I say front to front, they turn to face their partner, and then they talk about their answers. If they match, great. Well, hopefully they have the right answer matching. They could both have the wrong thing. And so then we have our discussion time about whether that answer is correct or not. And we talk a lot about in our class, we even use hand signals to answer. Did you get the same answer as they did, or as your teacher did, or did you get different? And those of you who are watching can see I'll use hand signals. We put two fists up for same. And if we want to show that we said something or did something different, then we put one fist and one open palm next to it. So that's the way. It's just a quick signal to show I got the same as you or different. We use this in opinions too. What would you think about that? Would your opinion be the same, or would it be different? And just a quick hand signal, and I can,
right.
quick scan across my classroom. I can see what they're thinking. And of course, there's really fancy boards like digital letter boards that are out there for you, even on the tablet or on the computer. There's many digital whiteboards that you can use as well that are really great. But there's a lot more out there than when we were in school, Jen.
That's great. Okay, so at the opening of the episode, I alluded to the fact that we don't always have a room full of anxious participants. Well, maybe in first grade, they all like to be called on.
Really.
But then, of course, then there is the real world. But we have times when we just need the one participant at a time. So a lot of what, and you mentioned it at the beginning, but a lot of what we've talked about is just getting everyone involved, which is fantastic, because we do have those who just kind of slide into the background while the more verbose ones are out front answering. But there are times when we do just need that one participant at a time. What are your thoughts on those who just never do want to participate? How do you avoid calling on the same person over and over? Because it definitely keeps the class moving. I mean, when you have someone with an answer, you can just keep going. But we do need everyone to participate. How do we do that?
Yeah, and then it comes down to you have to be motivating them to answer. I had a class a few years ago who about half of them were performing below grade level. And so they were very happy to have the top half just do all the answering while they sat there in quiet comfort. And I wanted to pull them out of there so that they would have to answer, and so that they would be part of the learning too, and not just sitting there in their comfort zone. So some things you can do to motivate students to answer. Yes, you've got to have times when there's only one answering, but how do you get them motivated to be the person to answer? Well, even using something like a spinner or a number cube, that when somebody answers, you roll the number cube or flip the spinner, and whatever number it lands on, that's how many points they get for their team. That is super motivating, because they want to be out there going, oh, I got this, I got a 6, or I got, that one was worth 10 or whatever. So you can do that. You can throw in fun things. I mean, for the little kids, especially, who love anything novel, like an eraser or, pencil, those extrinsic motivators. I use even smelly chapstick. Okay. So like, say we're doing a spelling page, everybody kind of checks out on the spelling page days. They're kind of boring. So if they answer, I come with my smelly chapstick and just put a little dot on their page. And they're like, oh, that smells so good. And then everybody, what is it? Is it raspberry today, or is it mint? And they gotta, and it's just, so all of a sudden one of their clip arts on their page smells. And it's just a fun little way to motivate them. But you wouldn't believe how the hands go in the air when they realize I've got that smelly spot in my hand. They call it smelly spelling. I guess that's kind of weird. But even those scratch off stickers that you can give, have a piece of construction paper with a little privilege written under it, whether it's, whatever, 2 points for your team, or you get to, I don't know, keep your water bottle on your desk. It doesn't have to be something you pay for. And they scratch it off and find out what they got when they answered something. Flying objects. Okay. That sounds funny, but like a stuffed animal, we have a little round gorilla in our class that we call him Bobo, the flying gorilla. And when I toss it to certain students to answer, all of a sudden all the hands go up because they want to catch Bobo. And I remember even in high school, some of our high school teachers doing this,
That's right. I
tossing
was
a,
just thinking the same
a
thing.
really neat feeling ball or something. And it's just, there's something really great about that. And they love it. And it, keep it unique. Don't just toss a sock or something unless it's your class, mascot or something, but keep it unique so that they want to feel that, and it's that tactile motivator. There's also some really great things out there on like Slides Mania, Slides Go. There are some really great, even like unpredictable tic-tac-toe games. Depending on where you put it digitally, gives you a certain amount of points. There's little number boards. If you click on a certain window, it gives you a certain number of points for your team. There's so many different digital things out there. Wheel of Names is a great way. Having a wheel, either one that you can touch there in your classroom or in digital form, and putting their names on there and flipping it so it'll come to a name and they have to answer. I'm not so much for the putting in the name. Sometimes it stresses the little kids out when they're like, I don't know when it just landed on me. But sometimes putting point totals or putting the answers or the questions there, or a prize or a privilege or whatever. And it gives them the excitement of the anticipation of what's going to happen. And even strategy games, they have a lot of fun little games that we use for inside recess that my students coming in may not know how to play. So we use those as motivators for answering in class. So like we have a fun game called Goblet Gobblers. It's like a fancy tic-tac-toe where you can put your piece over one of your opponent's pieces. And so I have them answer in class, and then that's what they get for answering. They get to come place a piece. And I'm teaching them the inside recess games without me having to explain the rules every time. And it's also keeping them motivated. And you can celebrate with prizes. I know we want to get them away from the extrinsic motivation, but throw them in every once in a while, whether it be a sticker or whether it be a stamp or the smelly chapstick or whatever. Even something small, like you can buy those sound effects sound boxes, and it has like a cheering sound or a yeehaw or a clapping sound. My students love those. Sometimes I'll just walk around with one of those little sound boxes in my hand without them knowing. And when somebody says something great or participates when they don't normally, I touch one of those sounds and the whole place erupts because they just love that. And then they all want to answer because they want the sound to be pushed for them. So yeah, it is endless. We could go on all day with these ideas, but hopefully that has helped to fill their baskets a little with some more tools they can use.
Yes. Oh, absolutely. Okay. So before we wrap up, because I want to be mindful of the time, I want to loop back around. You started talking about prizes just a little bit. So maybe we'll end with controversy. So some teachers give prizes for answering, and I think we all know that could get out of hand very easily. But what about the students who then think that they should get something tangible every single time they do something? So what are your thoughts on that? Awards, rewards, just let them go intrinsic, or are there ways to celebrate? You touched on, kind of the sound effects and things like that, but are there any quick ways they can celebrate without a prize for every single answer?
Well, I think keeping it random and keeping it unpredictable is a big way, at least that I pull my little first graders away from. I tell them that sometimes they say, do I get a prize for that? I say 2 + 2 and they say 4. Do I get a prize for that? And I'm like, well, if you were a puppy, yes. Puppies get treats for every good thing they do, but you're not a dog. What do you know? Okay. So, and we just kind of make a joke out of it because it is a hard thing to learn in life, but keep it random. If you've got a pocket, keep something in your pocket, but don't give it every time. Oh, that was wonderful. Wow. And pull it away from the things that they can actually touch, a sticker or candy or whatever, and make it the celebration, the sounds. Okay. It's a different kind of celebration. They're not getting something, but just pulling them away from that little by making it, 1, random, and then 2, making it something that maybe isn't in their hands, but is a celebration, and they feel the feeling inside of, hey, I got that right. That feels good.
Yeah, that's great. Super practical. As the weeks go on in school, practical tips and reminders like these are just so needed and so helpful. Katie, thank you so much for sharing your insights and your ideas with us. Always appreciated. It is always fun having you on the show, and we trust your school year ahead will be a great one.
Thank you. It was fun to be back.
And listeners, thank you for joining us today. I hope you were able to gather some good reminders and some practical ideas to use as you interact with your students. As we close this episode, just a reminder to visit our website, teachereditionpodcast.com, for more great information about the podcast and each episode. Of course, be sure to subscribe to the podcast and follow us on social media. Now, it's time to get back to your day, but it's not just any day. Every day in the classroom is your day to impact and inspire, not in your own strength, but through God's power and His grace working in you. Go do what God has called you to do.